I always believed my parents treated us equally. That belief was one of the foundational things I carried into adulthood. The idea that whatever my parents had given or not given, they had done it the same way for both of us. My brother Daniel and I are 3 years apart. We grew up in the same house, went to similar schools, had the same general experience of a middle-class family that worked hard and lived carefully. My parents were not wealthy people. My father ran a small contracting business for most of his career. My mother worked part-time and managed the household. There was enough, but there was not excess. Or so I believed for most of my adult life. I found out the truth 11 years after it started, on a Tuesday afternoon in November, sitting on the floor of my childhood home going through my father's documents after his death. My father passed away in September after a long illness. He was 68 years old. The months before his death were difficult in the way that long illnesses are: gradual, exhausting, full of small losses before the final one. My mother had been his primary caregiver, and by the end she was depleted in a way I had never seen in her before. I flew home 4 times in the last year of his life and stayed for weeks at a stretch. Daniel visited twice. I noted this at the time but said nothing. Daniel lived 2 hours away, had a flexible work schedule, and had what I privately considered insufficient reasons for his absence. But grief and caregiving are complicated, and I did not want to add conflict to an already difficult situation. I absorbed the imbalance and focused on what needed to be done. After my father's death, there was an estate to settle. Not a large one. The house, a modest savings account, some investments. My parents had a will that divided everything equally between Daniel and me. Straightforward, or so I assumed. My mother asked me to go through my father's home office and organize his financial documents for the estate attorney. It was a practical task, the kind that falls to the person who is present. I said yes without thinking much about it. I want to tell you exactly what I found, and then I want to tell you what I did with it. My father's filing system was organized, but dense. He had kept records of everything, bank statements going back decades, tax returns, property documents, correspondence. He was a careful man who did not trust digital records and printed everything that mattered. I worked through the files methodically, sorting into categories for the attorney. Most of it was straightforward. Then I reached a section near the back of the second drawer that contained a series of folders I did not immediately recognize. The folders were labeled by year, 11 of them starting 12 years ago and ending the previous year. Inside each folder were bank transfer records and what appeared to be informal loan agreements, single-page documents, handwritten terms signed by my father and my brother. I pulled the first one and read it carefully. It was a transfer of $15,000. The document described it as a loan, repayable within 5 years at no interest. It was dated 12 years ago, the year Daniel had started a small business that ultimately failed after 3 years. I checked the subsequent folders. The business loan had never been repaid. There were records of my father following up twice and records of Daniel's responses, apologetic, promising repayment when things stabilized. Things never stabilized, and at some point the follow-up stopped. But the transfers did not stop. Over the following 9 years, there were 7 additional transfers. Some were described as loans. Others were described in the documents simply as gifts for a down payment on Daniel's first house, for a car, for a period of unemployment that lasted 8 months, for what was described only as personal financial difficulty. The amounts varied: $8,000 here, $22,000 there, one transfer of $35,000 in a single transaction 4 years ago. I added the numbers 3 times because I did not trust my own arithmetic. The total across all 11 years was $214,000. I sat on the floor of my father's office for a long time. Let me tell you about my own financial history over that same period, because context matters here. The year the first transfer was made to Daniel, I was 27 and had just left a stable job to go back to school for a graduate degree that I needed to advance in my field. I had asked my parents once whether there was any possibility of help with tuition. My father had told me, kindly but clearly, that they did not have the resources to assist and that he was sorry. I took out loans. I worked part-time throughout the program. I graduated with significant debt that took me 7 years to fully pay off. 3 years later, my husband and I were trying to buy our first home and came up short on the down payment by $18,000. I asked my parents again, not as an expectation, but as a question. My father said they wished they could help, but their savings were committed to retirement. I understood, took out an additional loan, and we made it work. I had never been given a reason to doubt those explanations. I had accepted them as the truth of our family's financial situation. The folders in the filing cabinet told a different story. I did not call Daniel that day. I did not call my mother. I sat with what I had found for 4 days before I said anything to anyone. During those 4 days, I went through a range of emotions that I will try to describe accurately because I think the complexity matters. The first thing I felt was not anger. It was something closer to disorientation, the specific feeling of having a foundational belief removed without warning. I had organized a significant portion of my adult decisions around the understanding that my parents had treated us equally because they had no choice. The degree programs I chose based on what I could afford. The house we bought. The years of debt repayment that shaped our budget and our choices. All of it had been made against a backdrop that I now understood was not real. The anger came on the second day, and it was substantial. Not a hot anger, a cold, clear one. The kind that does not pass quickly. The third day I thought about my mother. She was 64 years old, recently widowed, and in a fragile state. Whatever I did with what I had found, I had to consider the impact on her. The fourth day I called my husband and told him everything. He listened without interrupting for a long time. Then he said, "What do you want to happen?" I sat with that question for another day. What I wanted, I eventually understood, was not money. The estate was modest, the equal division was already documented in the will, and pursuing a legal claim against my brother or my mother's portion would have been destructive in ways that extended far beyond any financial outcome. What I wanted was acknowledgement and honesty, and the end of a pretense that had shaped my understanding of my own family for more than a decade. I called my mother on a Friday evening. I told her I had been going through Dad's files and had found the folders. I told her I had added the numbers. I told her I was not calling to make accusations or demands. I was calling because I needed her to tell me the truth about what had happened and why. There was a very long silence. What followed was one of the most painful conversations I have ever had. Not because my mother was cruel or dismissive, but because she was neither of those things. She was sorry. She explained, slowly and carefully, that Daniel had struggled in ways that he had hidden from me, that there had been periods of genuine crisis, and that my father had made decisions in the moment that he had not known how to address retrospectively. She said they had told themselves it would balance out eventually, that they would find ways to help me too, that they had always intended to make it right. I asked her why. When I had asked for help with my down payment, my father had said they had no resources. She did not have a good answer to that. I told her I needed some time. I ended the call. I called Daniel 2 weeks later. The conversation was shorter than the one with my mother. Daniel knew immediately why I was calling. My mother had told him I had found the documents. He did not deny anything. He sounded, more than anything else, tired. He said he had always known it would come out eventually. He said he was sorry I had found out this way. I asked him one question. Had he ever intended to tell me? He said he didn't know. I told him that was the most honest thing he had said in 11 years. We have spoken twice since that conversation. Both times were at family events, brief and civil. The warmth that used to be there is not there anymore. I do not know if it will return. I am not holding my breath, but I am not closing the door either. My mother and I have continued to talk, more honestly than we ever did before. That part has been unexpectedly valuable. There is something that happens when the pretense is removed. Even when removing it is painful, that creates the possibility of a more real relationship. We are still finding our way through it. The estate was settled as written. Equal division. I did not contest it. I want to leave you with something honest about what this experience taught me, because I have thought about it a great deal in the months since. The money was real, and the imbalance was real, and the years of decisions I made based on false information were real. I am not going to tell you that none of that matters, But the thing I keep coming back to is not the money. It is the question of what we tell ourselves to justify the choices we make, how we construct narratives that allow us to live with decisions that examine clearly we know are not right. My parents told themselves they would make it even eventually. My brother told himself he hadn't really asked for any of it. Everyone found a way to not see clearly. I spent 11 years not seeing clearly either. Not because I was deceived at every turn, because I trusted, and trust has a way of smoothing over the details that don't quite fit. I see clearly now. It is not a comfortable kind of clarity, but it is real. And in my experience, real is always better than comfortable, even when it takes a long time to feel that way. The filing cabinet is empty now. The folders are with the estate attorney. The house is on the market. And I am slowly figuring out what it means to move forward with an accurate understanding of where I came from. That turns out to be more important than I expected.